Hey everyone, Chaps here, and welcome to day 10 of our New Zealand vacation. And to be straight with you, today sucked. Not just worse than the other days, because, the other days were fantastic. Everything was smooth and basically according to plan. But today, not so much. We had a few interesting experiences, but overall it was not great. So let's hop into it. Day 10 of our trip from the North Island and going down to the South Island. The original plan was to drive to Taupo and explore Huka Falls, then fly out. We'll catch a late afternoon flight from Taupo to Auckland, and then have a 2-hour layover, and then fly to Queenstown. The day started as planned, a nice drive to Taupo, and then we walked around for a little bit. And actually, I'm just going to stop here and say, this city, Taupo, is one that has thrown us off so much. From what I can understand from the locals, it's called Taupo. We kept calling it Taupo the entire time we were there until near the end. And it's taking so much energy for me to say Taupo now. But anyways, I did stop by a pharmacy while we were there, and I asked about some options for seeing a doctor and pick up a few things for my throat. After killing some time there, we began our hike to Huka Falls. You can do a 2-hour loop or just a 10-minute walk to the falls. We had time to kill, so we opted for the longer loop. After 15 minutes or so, though, we found out that the footpath was closed due to damage, but the walkers are welcome to use the bike path, so we followed that. Another 15 minutes in, and we saw signs that said it was going to be a 5-kilometer hike. Normally, that's not that bad, but we already had blisters, we had a few big hikes planned for the next couple of days, and so we noped right out of that one. We just hopped in the car and drove to the falls to take the short, 5 to 10 minute hike. The fall itself was pretty cool, but not really what we were expecting. The color was this amazing blue, and the flow rate was insane. That said, I hardly consider it a fall, more of a trip or a stumble. Sorry, obligatory dad joke there. But anyways, not really what we expected. Sure, it was a 10-minute hike, but I don't think us adding a day to our trip in order to visit Taupo was really worth it in the end. We had some time to kill, so we headed back to town and walked around. We picked up some wool socks to help for some of the blisters on the upcoming hikes. Oh, and ice cream. We found this place called the New Yorker. It's some guy from the Brooklyn area who moved to New Zealand and set up an ice cream shop. It's basically a stand right on the northeast side of the lake there, and they sell ice cream. But the cool thing was they were selling, he's the New Yorker, so he needs to mix Brooklyn and New York with ice cream. He's selling these pizza slices, or ice cream pizza slices. And they had all kinds of themes. I think I got the Wall Street. Caroline got one called the Central Park, and these things were just absolutely amazing. That ice cream was fantastic. From there, we decided to take the short drive over to the airport. Now, I've been in a small airport before. I've flown into Ithaca, New York a few times, and I consider that a small airport. But man, this place was small. No security, no terminal. It's just a waiting area. The place serves some helicopters and skydiving tours, and it has one plane that goes between Auckland and Taupo, and just basically goes back and forth. The place itself was actually really nice. Apparently it was constructed less than a month ago. The old terminal is still next, I call it a terminal, but it's like a shack almost. The old place was right next door, and they stopped using it about a month ago when this new place got built, so it was all very new. It was very nice. Air New Zealand is very strict on bag sizes and weights. The carry-on allowance is 7 kilograms. I'll throw something up on the screen to say what that is in pounds, but it's very light, especially, I had to empty half of my carry-on suitcase in order for it to be allowed. So we had to rearrange our bags for a little bit in order for everything to be allowed. We ended up with 3 checked bags and 1 carry-on, and then our 2 personal items, rather than we're hoping for 2 checked, 2 carry-on, 2 personal, but whatever. We had a few hours to kill at this point, so I sat down on my Chromebook and jotted down a bunch of notes from the past few days. And actually, the videos that you guys are watching now, a lot of this was typed up while I was at that airport there. So while waiting, we actually felt a Category 6 earthquake come through. The whole building shook and people were looking a little confused. Honestly, it almost felt like a big gust of wind came by. But the guy working at the counter, basically one of the only employees in the building, and he seemed almost like a manager or owner of the building because the place is so small. He said that it registered a 4.6, which is decent but not huge, and they get them quite frequently. The area is just surrounded by all this volcanic activity and fault lines and stuff, so apparently earthquakes are not that uncommon. But hey, I felt a 4.6. That was my first earthquake of any reasonable magnitude that I can remember. So we had a pretty long wait, and one of the things I noticed is that our flight to Auckland left at 7:30, and it only takes 3 to 3.5 hours to drive there. We had plenty of time to kill that day, and instead of just sitting in an airport, we honestly could have just driven back to Auckland and skipped that first flight. We really should have done that. For starters, it would have made our rental car a lot cheaper, round trip versus a one-way rental. And secondly, due to our Taupo flight being pushed back slightly, it's not actually landing in Auckland until 7, and being our next flight takes off at 7:30, that is a really short layover. They actually started boarding our Auckland flight before our Taupo flight even landed. And now you may be thinking, Chaps, I thought you said today sucked. This doesn't seem that bad. I mean, things aren't perfect, but it's not that bad. Well, here we go. So the incoming flight from Taupo landed at 7:15. It was actually delayed even further. And our next flight started boarding at 6:55 and took off at 7:30. Being that Taupo Airport is so small and there's no security there, we actually had to go through security in Auckland. When we got into the line at Auckland, we heard the final call for our flight, and we're like, oh crap, we missed this. So we start walking over to the help desk to get some help, and assuming, we're going to have to spend the night in a hotel. So while the lady's helping us at that desk, they called our actual names over the intercom and said final call. So this lady, bless her heart, she dropped what she was doing, called the gate, told them to wait, and just booked it, escorting us. We were just running through the Auckland airport, getting escorted. We went through some special doorways. She got us to cut all the way to the front of the security line, had a quick security thing, and we jogged to our gate, and they held the flight for us. And the flight actually took off at 7:40, so 10 minutes after it was supposed to take off, because they waited for us. That was actually fantastic. And that's still not a bad day. It's actually a pretty cool experience. It was a roller coaster of concern, then hope, and then relief, all in the span of 20 minutes. And the icing on the cake here was that the emergency row on the plane was actually empty. So instead of taking our normal seats, we got to sit in the emergency row, and I'm a tall 6'4" guy. Legroom, very nice. And I'll say, even though we didn't take off until actually probably closer to 7:50 that we actually took off, we still managed to land in Queenstown on time, right around 9:30 p.m. So, that was a little bit of a roller coaster, but our day had peaked. We hit the peak, and it was all downhill from here. Turns out that due to the short layover, eggs didn't make it onto the plane. So I always learn to, pack your essentials in your carry-on or your personal item in case your checked bags get lost. Well, remember, I had to rearrange all of my bags in order to abide by the Air New Zealand rules, and I wasn't really thinking. So a lot of our essential stuff got put in our checked luggage, and our checked luggage got lost. It didn't make it onto that plane from Auckland to Queenstown. The next plane arrived at 9 a.m., so we were going to have to spend the night without our checked luggage. Oh well, not a huge deal. Unfortunately, we are driving the next day, so that kind of sucks. But we grabbed our rental car and headed to the hotel, or so we thought. First off, I'll discuss the rental a little bit more in the next video, but as for the hotel, the lobby's closed because it's after hours, which is something I've seen a lot here in New Zealand. It's sort of like this intercom, so we tried to talk to the guy over the intercom because the lobby doors lock at a certain time. They couldn't find our booking info. And stupid chaps, I booked March 10th instead of March 5th. Why? Because we're on day 10, and when I booked this thing, I was like, oh, day 10, March 10th. Booking online, I booked March 10th. I'm dumb. I also realized that I did that for days 12th through day 15. I booked March 12th through March 15th, because my brain was all jumbled up at the time I was making reservations. Man, I really screwed up there. So our hotel wasn't ready, and they didn't have any extra rooms. So after checking around for a little bit, we found a hotel that was pretty close that did have vacancy. We actually it was the last available room at a Holiday Inn nearby, and we had to settle for twin beds rather than the normal queen or king that we try and get. We also paid about twice as much as we typically would for the hotel that we tried to get, or the other hotels that we would be doing, because it was the last room and it was last minute, so that really sucked. Also, we were missing most of Caroline's things because the lost luggage. I actually had a decent amount of what I needed in my backpack, so it wasn't that bad for me. But it was about 11 p.m. by the time we checked in, and we were shot. It was bedtime. So, there you go. There you have it. That was the worst day of the trip by far. In hindsight, I can say, yes, that was the worst day of the trip by far. Almost missing our flight, getting our luggage lost, having be the wrong hotel, and then really just on top of that, the day in Taupo, it was okay. We saw some cool stuff, but it was really just a wasted day. We didn't actually do that much, so yeah, not a great day. But that was day 10. We got 6 days left, and we're on the South Island now. So tomorrow is going to hopefully be a little bit better. Yes, it was a little bit better. We're going to the Mount Cook area and then Lake Tekapo. Oh, and the mystery of the lost luggage. Will that be solved? Who knows? If you don't want to miss that, go ahead and subscribe. Hit those notification bells. You can tune in tomorrow and catch that next video as we check out Mount Cook and Tekapo. If you enjoyed this, you enjoyed listening to my misery, go ahead and hit that like button. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below, and I'll try and answer them, or you can hit me up on Twitter. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you next time.